All right, let's start recording now. So, all right, so today's class is entitled Mindfulness, okay, the art of self-remembering. That is really the term that we use in the Gnostic tradition. Instead of mindfulness, we use the term self-remembering because, and you know, I personally love the term self-remembering because, first of all, it sort of implies something that you already know how to do, right? And it just explains exactly what we're doing when we are in a mindful state. We are remembering the self. We are remembering the being. And from that being, from that state of consciousness, we are experiencing the world, okay? Which is very different than experiencing the world only through the five senses of the physical body and the sensual mind. Okay, in the last few classes, I think it was class number 8, we talked about the 3 aspects of the mind, and we said that we have a sensual mind, an intermediate mind, and an interior mind. Okay. The sensual mind is that aspect of the mind that receives all of its information from the 5 senses. Okay, it's the most superficial aspect of the mind. The intermediate mind is that aspect of the mind that gathers experiences, memories, concepts, ideas, and then creates a concept about what reality is, and then our actions emanate from those concepts, right? From again, concepts and perception that come from our physical experience, okay? From the experiences that we accumulate here in the physical world through the 5 physical senses. And so those 2 aspects of the mind do not have any experience or vision of what we call our inner life or the occult life, okay? And so when we begin to open that interior mind, then we can begin to connect with what we call our inner life or our soul, the life of the soul, or the reality of the soul rather, and the reality of the being, the reality of God, the reality of the being. Okay, and so mindfulness or self-remembering is a state of being that allows us to perceive the world from the perspective of the self, from the perspective of the being, from the perspective of the soul, okay? And we use the mind, we use the emotions and the physical body to perceive the world, okay? And so that's why in mindfulness, there is always talk about the correct use of the mind, and how when we learn how to use the mind correctly, when we serene the mind, when the mind becomes passive, then we enter into a new state of receptivity, a new state of openness, okay? And so, again, when we use the term mindfulness, we usually hear the mind is part of that word, and so it kind of throws us off because it is not the mind that will allow us to experience mindfulness in itself. It is another aspect of ourselves as a being that allows us to experience mindfulness or to enter into that state of mindfulness. And that other aspect of the being of ourselves is referred to as the consciousness, okay? Consciousness is, as the word implies, to be conscious when there is consciousness present, okay? Or in other words, awareness, okay? So I've heard some people refer to it as the conscious mind, okay? We can use that term if you may, if you want. But I prefer the word consciousness because I like to remind myself that I am a consciousness. I am not a mind that thinks, right? I am more than thoughts. I am pure awareness, okay? All right, and so self-remembering, as explained by Jean Chapman, which is was a disciple from the School of the Fourth Way. If you're familiar with the School of the Fourth Way, the Fourth Way is a school that was started by an Eastern European master or esoteric master called Gurdjieff. And he coined the phrase, or he came up with a school referred to as the School of the Fourth Way. And this sort of brings us back to lesson number 2 or 3 of the program, where we talked about the way of the balanced man. And we say that there are basically 3 types of schools, okay? And then there is the fourth way, or the fourth school, which is the school that sort of synthesizes and practices all of those 3 different paths. Those paths or schools or traditions that I'm referring to are the way of the fakir, the monk, and the yogi. Right? And the fakir is that person who tries to, by the force of will and the mind, tries to overcome the physical body. Okay? And then the monk is one who tries to reach God through the emotion, through the heart, right? Through devotion, through prayer. And then there is the yogi who tries to connect with God, or, hey James, how are you? Welcome. Then there is the yogi who tries to connect with the truth by correctly using his mind, the powers of his mind, okay? And then there is the School of the Fourth Way, or the fourth, what we call the way of the balanced man, which is that person, that soul, who uses all of those 3 paths here and now, okay? And the big difference between, the balanced man is that the Gnostic or the balanced man doesn't leave life in order to reach self-realization or to reach illumination, right? He doesn't go into a monastery for the rest of his life to try to connect with God. We know in the Fourth Way that God is here and now, and that all we need is to know how to connect with him through the various spiritual techniques, right? And so that is who Jean Chapman is. And he says, self-remembering is an attempt within a specific moment to be more conscious, more aware, more present. Okay, so I'll read that again. Self-remembering is an attempt within a specific moment to be more conscious, more aware, more present. Okay, so it requires, if anything, it requires a new level of awareness. Okay, mindfulness or self-remembering is about expanding our awareness. Okay, from wherever it is, it's about expanding it. Okay, and this is why in all of the various talks that you'll hear about mindfulness or different practices, it all begins with fully being aware of the body, right? And so that's why in meditation and in the practices of mindfulness, being aware of the breath is so important, because the breath, or being aware of the breath, is sort of your connection, your link to the body, right? As a matter of fact, when we are born, they say that when you take your first breath in, that is when the soul is now completely locked into that physical body, okay? Not to say that that soul wasn't in that physical body before, because from a spiritual perspective, life begins at the moment of conception, right? At the moment of conception, the soul is linked to that physical body that is beginning to form, right? And so we can say that the soul or the essence is sort of going in and out of that body, okay? And in that body, it's a beautiful, the whole process of gestation to birth. It's another thing that we'll talk later on, but it's a beautiful process in which the soul begins to experience itself being back in the absolute, being back in the oneness, being back in the supra darkness, as the Egyptians actually refer to it. And we go through different stages there. We go through the sort of all of the kingdoms when we are there. We go through we go through the animal kingdom. We go through the vegetable kingdom when they're there. And even we go through the elements and all of that. But again, we'll talk about that later on. And so finally, when the soul actually enters this physical world, with the first breath, it is that link to the physical body. This is why, again, all of the schools of meditation and mindfulness and yoga, it's all about the breath. It's all about reconnecting with the breath, being mindful or aware of the breath, because that is the link. Okay, and if we begin to do that, we will begin to experience ourselves, okay, in a new state. We will begin to experience more things about ourselves, and our perceptions begin to expand. Okay, and that's the beauty of why we should practice mindfulness. As I mentioned in the last class, because we talked about some pretty interesting things in the previous class. And for those of you that missed it, I'll send you the video for that so you can do a recap. Okay. But we were talking about basically extrasensorial perceptions and having the ability to see things, like I was explaining, see things that are not available to us in our immediate surrounding through our five senses, but that are available to us when we use the mind, right? When we're able to project our mind, our souls, our consciousness beyond this physical body into other places and so forth, okay? So when we enter into the practice of mindfulness, our sense of self and our self-awareness begins to expand, begins to increase, okay? So let's find out where we all are in this moment, okay? What is our level of awareness in this moment? Because we cannot reach a new level of awareness if we're not conscious of where we are, right? And so let's do a little test, okay? And the test is, I know that you have a physical body. You know that you have a physical body. How conscious are you of your physical body in this moment? How much of your physical body can you actually sense, perceive, feel, right?
When you think about it or when you don't think about it?
Interesting question. Because as you see, it's all a matter of awareness. And awareness implies that you use the mind, but you're not necessarily thinking. So you use the mind as in order to perceive, to receive information that comes from your senses and from your emotions, right? And even from the internal worlds, okay? And so it's both, right? When you use the mind to be aware of it. Right now, for instance, you know that you have a left toe, right? Now that I mention it, you can actually feel it. You can sense it.
Left toe, too.
Right. You really get specific to it.
Read into it.
Yeah. And so it's very interesting because before you were conscious of it, I mean, you know that you have a left toe, you're not aware of it, right? And the fact of not being aware of it means that you're not necessarily connected to it, that you're not necessarily one with it, right? And so that's what mindfulness is. That's what self-remembering is. It's just in a bigger scale. We're not only using mindfulness to remember our toe, right? But we're using mindfulness to remember who we are, okay? And we begin with simple little things like, let's remember the breath. And then you breathe in, you breathe out, you become aware of the sensations of the breath as it goes into your nose, into your lungs, how your body feels when the breath goes in, when you hold it, when you exhale, you begin to feel the rest of your body, you begin to feel your muscles becoming relaxed, right? You begin to feel your heartbeat, your blood circulation, right? The temperature of your body, the energy of your body, the vibratory state of your body, okay? And so forth, right? When you begin to practice mindfulness, you become aware of all of those things. And when we could, that is a process of expanding our consciousness, right? You'll notice that wherever you focus your awareness, that's where you are, technically, right? And so when we use, remember, the ultimate purpose of mindfulness is to remember the self, to experience the self, to experience that higher aspect of ourselves, that Atman, that divinity, okay? But before we get there, we need to start from here, right? And so as you begin to expand your awareness of self, which starts with the most familiar to you, which is breath, the body, the heart, right? Then it goes even deeper into my emotions, right? What I'm feeling. Hello, welcome.
I'm so sorry.
No, welcome. You're Jessica, right?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Christian.
Hi.
See.
I came from Jersey, so
Yeah.
I've been doing this since I was 9 years old. I went to Queens for this.
Oh yeah. Well, welcome back. Okay, so what was that?
Being aware of your body, then the emotions.
Emotions, yes. I was being aware. So when we begin to awaken, okay, that faculty that we call awareness, okay, you begin with the physical body, then you begin to feel that your body has energy, right? Vibratory state. Then you feel, and then you begin to experience that you also have emotions, and that those emotions come and go. There are different types of emotions, and you'll begin to become aware of the facts that there are what we call positive emotions, and there are negative emotions, right? There are emotions that not only make you feel dense, heavy, right, and decreases the vibration of your physical body, it also narrows the way that you think, because your emotions affect your physical body and your mind, right? How you think, your ability to perceive the world is affected by your emotions. And so, again, when we become aware of the types of emotions that we have, then we begin to have a little bit more control, right? Then we can say, all right, well, now I know what I have. Let me see how I can fix this. Let me see what I can do about this, right? And so as we penetrate deeper and deeper, as we expand our awareness, we also begin to see our thoughts. And we begin to see how our thoughts create emotions, and those emotions create actions, create behaviors, right? And then we begin to go deeper. And it comes into a point where you'll see that your mind has different states. One, which is the most common one, when our mind is projecting things, when our mind is projecting thoughts. Then there is another very interesting state of the mind when the mind is quiet, when the mind is receptive, when the mind is completely open. And then we begin to experience that which we call awareness, okay? That which we call being, okay? And in that state, we begin to sense, feel, and perceive ourselves within the body and within the environment. And that's sort of one of the qualities of mindfulness. It's very hard, again, to say exactly what mindfulness is, because it's a state of being that transcends mind, right? But we can talk about qualities of what it is to be in that state, right? And then it is up to each one of us to open ourselves to that and to experience that, okay? And so this is why I say that self-remembering is a state, or mindfulness or self-remembering is a state in which we are able to sense, feel, and perceive ourselves within the body and within the environment. Huh?
Duality.
Yes, we can begin to see the duality, and oddly enough, it allows us to even transcend duality. Because in a deep state of being, okay, we transcend all duality, because we see that the duality really is created by the mind. Okay? There are no nothing is really separate. Everything is bound together, right? And the one that separates everything is our mind, right? Our mind right now, or our inferior mind, does not allow us to actually see the connection that we all have, right? Because we don't see ourselves as souls, we don't see ourselves as spirit, okay? But the deeper that we go into self-remembering, the deeper that we connect with that transcendental aspect that unites us all, okay? And so the purpose of this course is to give us various techniques on how to enter into that state of awareness, and that state of self-remembering, okay? And we've all experienced these states of intense being completely present or being completely awake, okay? In the Gnostic tradition, we focus on creating what we call conscious shocks, okay? Meaning states of being that are triggered by conscious action, okay? As opposed to the normal unconscious shocks, which is how most of us experience awareness, okay? Let me give you an example, okay? In the Gnostic tradition, we say that there are 4 states of consciousness, okay? And this is sort of getting into next class. Those states of consciousness are referred to the state of sleep, vigil state, self-consciousness, and objective consciousness. The first state is, like I said, sleep, which is when we are basically on our bed, totally unconscious, and we're dreaming, okay? The next step is the vigil state. We wake up and we're trying to awake, okay? The third step, or the third level of consciousness, the third state of consciousness rather, is referred to as the self-conscious state. This is what this is the state that we find ourselves when we self-remember, when we practice mindfulness, okay? Which gives you awareness of self, okay? And then the last one, which is the fourth one, is referred to as objective consciousness, or or cosmic consciousness rather, which is when you now begin to have an experience of your cosmic or transcendental aspect. They refer to this as experiencing the oneness. They refer to this as experiencing the illuminating void, becoming one with the all, and so forth. That's when we transcend duality, okay? Or duality, or the illusion of duality breaks apart, and we are one, okay? That is the fourth state of consciousness. Before we get to the third state of consciousness, which is self-consciousness or awareness, we have to rise above the first and second states of consciousness. And the second state of, usually we're walking around, okay, from a psychological point of view, from an occult psychological point of view, even when we are, even when our body is physically awake, it doesn't mean that we are awake. It doesn't mean that our consciousness is active, right? So what does that mean? That means that the consciousness is dreaming. The consciousness is in a sort of state of hypnosis, right? And so then back to the example that I was going to try to give is when we are walking down the street, for instance, and we are thinking about the conversation that we're going to have with our boss when we get to work, okay? In that moment, even though you're physically here, you're not here, right? And you can actually see images in your mind. And so what happens is your immediate reality is actually distorted, right? You're not really present. You're not really fully aware of what's happening. All of a sudden you cross the street and it was a green light. It was in your turn to cross. And then someone slams on the brakes and there you are, right?
Like when my fiance's talking most of the time.
So would that be considered an unconscious shock?
That would be an unconscious shock, yes. So an unconscious shock is when sudden and unexpected circumstances call our attention, okay? So you were over there, and now all of a sudden you're forced to be here. And now You're aware of how hard your heart beats in that moment, the temperature of your body goes up, and so forth, right? And you start to look everywhere, okay? That is a state of consciousness. That is a third state of consciousness that was reached by an unconscious shock, right? So nature or your environment is sort of calling you to awake, okay? But we cannot depend on the environment to wake us up spiritually, right? And that's the whole purpose of the Gnostic studies, that we need to make conscious efforts every moment of our lives to awaken. Otherwise, you will never become awake, right? And so that means that we have to learn to activate that quality of being that's referred to as consciousness, which can be done when we stop assuming that we are experiencing reality clearly. Okay? We cannot assume that we're always experiencing reality clearly because our mind is subjective, right? And again, we're always sort of projecting and interpreting what reality is. How many times have you gone into a place and thought it looked like this or it looked like that and it didn't, right? You know, one of the examples that I always give is like if you came into this room and all of a sudden you smell the perfume or the cologne of your ex, you know? Depending on how that ended, you'll be either excited or really angry and want to run away, right?
Story about that. When I was taking a nap one day, and you know that moment right before you wake up, it's like saying what you're creative. But something to wake up. And I woke up. I had just bought a computer that day before my very first laptop, and I went to my computer and I said, I have a story to tell you. It just became like thoughts, random thoughts, and then it became memories of things that I didn't remember until I was suppressed.
Wow. Okay.
And it became like the first 12 years of my life, and it just like all flowed at that moment. So it's interesting to say that I kind of went through all those steps in real time.
Right.
You know, and it's a tangible thing. It's something out of my mind into my. So.
Right, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. I'll get back to the story of the perfume in a minute, but that's what I was trying to say. That when we begin to practice mindfulness, self-remembering, we begin to expand our sense of awareness and not just become more aware of our immediate surroundings, ourselves, our physical selves, but we begin to tap into, or we become more aware of who we are deep inside. We begin to become aware and experience that transcendental aspect of self. We begin to remember more things about this current life. You might begin to remember memories from previous lives, who your being is, your spiritual authentic name, because we all have an authentic name, and they gave us this name because they really didn't know who we are. All right, you look like Christian. All right, we'll give you the name. And so that's a great example, right? So getting back to the story, right? If you come into this room and you all of a sudden have that scent of your ex, in those fractions of seconds, or in those few seconds, he or she is here, and it triggers a physical reaction, and it could sort of distort. In that moment, your perception of reality is distorted because the fact of the matter is that he or she is not here, right? But for those couple of seconds, you were living, we can say, in an alternate reality, okay? And this is why now we can understand why different spiritual masters are always saying, awake. We need to awake, right? And you're like, no, I'm awake. Look, my eyes are open. But no, you're not. And so when we begin to awake, we begin to perceive more things that there are that most people under the inferior states can perceive, right? And so in the Gnostic tradition, we say that even though you are physically awake, you could still be sleeping. You could still be dreaming, okay? And so then let's begin to watch or rather observe ourselves, right? And this is one of the techniques to self-remember, to expand consciousness. This is a technique that we call self-observation, okay? To observe the self, to observe ourselves, to not only observe what's happening outside in the world, but to observe what's happening within me, how the external world is creating changes within me, right? Okay, and so this requires that we do something called the division of attention. When you practice mindfulness, when you make an effort to be more aware, more conscious, more present, you will be required to divide your attention between what we call the observer and the observed, okay? The observer, it is me. It is the I am. And the observed is whatever you are paying attention to, whether it is your higher self, whether it is your mind, whether it is your emotions, your environment, and so forth, right? And so in self-remembering, there is this sort of reality check that is happening, right? What am I observing? And am I observing this objectively, right? When I see a bird flying on the street, and this bird looks like a bird that my grandmother used to have, okay? Am I transported to my grandmother's house when I see that bird? Because if you are, then you're not present, right? And so can you observe the world without bringing forth memory, before adding anything to it, right? That allows you to begin to connect with the reality of the moment, okay? And then you will notice that there's a division that happens there. For example, right now, when I talk to you, I am paying attention to what I'm saying, okay? But I'm also trying to be in a self-remembering state. I'm also trying to remember my essential nature, my being, and not allow myself to be carried away somewhere else, right? If I, and sort of this is one of the reasons why I don't really like memorize a lecture, is if I try to memorize a lecture, then what I'm doing is I'm just repeating everything that I'm read, but it's like this person that's here, but I'm not really here. It's a robot that's here, right? And so self-observation leads to what we call self-remembering. So self-observation is awareness of what is happening, and self-remembering is more of an experience of who I am in this moment, okay? And so then there's a really interesting, funny movie with, it's called Anger Management. You guys familiar with that movie with Jack Nicholson and, what's the other guy? The comedian. No, Jack Nicholson and...
No. Young guy.
Yeah.
Youngish.
Young Jewish comedian.
Yeah, that guy.
Anyway, Anger Management. Adam Sandler, yes, thank you. Yes, that was Gloria, right? Adam Sandler. So the story is that they told him that he's an angry person. He doesn't believe it, right? So they send him to anger management therapy, okay? When he goes into the room, Jack Nicholson starts asking him, all right, why don't you start by telling us who you are? And he says, all right, well, you know, I'm a designer or something like that. He designs clothes for cats. It's a very interesting job, right?
For cats? Is that what you said?
Yeah, for cats. Actually, I'm getting totally off track here, but he designs clothes for fat cats, for overweight cats. Anyway, so he says that, and then no, don't tell us what you do. Tell us who you are. He says, well, you know, I like to, you know, play basketball, whatever, right? It's like, no, don't tell us your hobbies. Tell us who you are. then he starts getting a little anxious, you know, he starts tapping his feet on the floor, you know, and then he says, well, you know, I like to this, you know, and then he starts to get anxious, and then he starts to get anxious. No, just tell us who you are. And he says, I don't know what you want me to tell you. And he says, okay, we're getting an idea of who you are, right, in that moment. That's brilliant. So what he's asking is, who are you? In that moment, he is this angry person, right? Or he is a particular state of being, which is what I guess what he was really trying to make him figure out, right? We're not our jobs. We're not what we do. We're not the way that we talk, the way that we dress. We are a state of being, right? And then what is the quality of that state of being? We have to pay attention, because that's what's going to attract the various circumstances of your life, as we've been discussing in previous lectures, right? And so then that's why in self-observation, we really begin to look at ourselves in an objective way, right? Not in, this is who I think I am, this is the perception that I have of myself. Really, who are you? What state of being is present here in this moment? Because you have different states of being that flow in and out throughout the day. Which one of those states of being are you, right? And so I have with me the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which you guys are probably familiar with. He's like the mindfulness guru, right? So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there is a part of the book that was very interesting. You know, I don't know if you're familiar, but the book he starts to say his personal story, that around the year, when he was around 29, he was very depressed. And then he wakes up one day and he's having all these negative thoughts, right? It's suicidal thoughts. And he said one of these thoughts is, I cannot live with myself any longer. Then he says, this was the thought that kept repeating itself in the mind. Then suddenly I became aware of what a particular thought that was. Am I one or two? If I cannot live with myself, there must be two in me, or there must be two of me, rather. The I and the self that I cannot live with. Maybe I thought only one of them is real. Magical. So, which one of those I's within you is the real one, right? And that's where we're trying to get to here in this course, in those things. Which one of all of those different states of being that you experience throughout the day is the real you, right? And I'm not going to tell you which one it is, because quite frankly, I wouldn't really know which one it is. You're the one that has to figure it out. You're the one that has to experience it. It's all a matter of experience. Like I said before, we can only talk about qualities of being, qualities or qualities that are felt when you're in that third state of consciousness, but you're the one that actually has to feel it. You're the one that has to experience it, right? Okay, and so that's the question, to be or not to be, right? As Shakespeare said, okay? To be or not to be. Am I really being in this moment or not? Is it my personality, the one that is being in this moment, the one that is present in this moment, interpreting the various circumstances of life, or is it my real being, right? My
personality.
the
persona.
yeah, the persona, which personality comes from the word persona, which means the mask of the actor, right? And so the personality is like a mask that we wear to express certain values. And so what values is your personality expressing in this moment? The values of your real self, or the values of your illusory self, which is what we call the ego, okay? Okay, so awakening techniques. We've already spoken about one of them, self-observation and self-remembering, okay? And there's something called the key of soul. the key of SOL, which is subject, object, and location. Basically, in any given moment, as you want to create that conscious shock, you ask yourself, who am I? What am I doing? Where am I? Okay? I'll give you a few seconds. Who am I in this moment? And then that implies that you actually take a moment to feel, to sense your body, to be aware of your thoughts, what you're thinking, the perception that you have of yourself, okay? And again, how does that feel? What am I doing? Okay, what am I doing in this moment? I am listening, okay? Or I am connecting with self, I am being, right? And then where am I? Where am I? That's one of the most important questions that you always ask yourself. Where am I? Like I said, wherever your consciousness is, that's where you are, okay? You're here now. When I do this, like, oh, what's that? Now you're here, right? And then I start saying things. Maybe that reminds you of something that you read, and then you start remembering that sentence that you read, and then you're no longer here. See how evasive it is, the present moment? And that's why it requires practice, and it requires training our attention, okay? And that's where meditation comes in, okay? The more that you meditate, the easier that it is for you to train your mind to concentrate and to focus on one thing at a time, which is hopefully self, the self. And then that self will connect you with everything, okay? All right, so those are the three keys that I'm giving today, and obviously we'll continue to talk even more about that. But one more is to try to be in a completely relaxed state at all times. Okay, and that's the easiest one. At every moment, ask yourself, am I completely relaxed? Am I relaxed? How more relaxed can I get? And you'll notice that the more that you relax, or as you relax, you begin to notice that your senses begin to expand. Your sensation of self begins to expand. Your spatial sense begins to expand, okay? And that will be the next class. Is entitled The Spatial Sense and the Fourth Dimension. Because when we begin to expand our consciousness, we actually begin to experience the multi-dimensionality of life and of the universe. When we begin to expand our consciousness, we begin to become aware, like I was saying, of not only our physical body, but of our fourth dimensional aspect, of our fifth dimensional aspect, sixth, seventh, all the way to our spirit, to the spiritual dimension, okay? Okay, and those of you who are interested in lucid dreams and triggering lucid dreams, here's an extra key. Besides, that's part of the key of soul, subject, object, location. Who am I? What am I doing? Where am I? When you ask yourself, where am I? Ask yourself, am I in the physical world or am I dreaming? And the more that you do that throughout the day, guess what will happen? In the dream, all of a sudden you'll start to say, where am I? Am I dreaming or am I in the physical world?
That's the problem I'm having.
Okay.
I'm asking myself that question now in dreams, and it takes me somewhere that I'm like, I don't even know why it's sticking there. It takes me to places that are unusual, some places that I've been before, seeing things that I haven't experienced.
That's a
I don't
problem.
know.
Yeah, that's
No. But I realize that it is. It's like the actual that I totally get it. Like, but it's scaring me because I'm like, why is it taking me? Like, where am I supposed to go?
Don't let anything scare you.
Where am I supposed to go? Like, it takes me like in the core of the earth, like things like that, aliens and everything.
That's a good question. That's a good question. Where is this? Yeah, where am I supposed to go?
It's showing me schools, a school that I supposed to be practicing. It was like a witch school in Spain.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh my God. And I start remembering all the stuff that I actually did to it in my past life.
Okay.
I know how to write my own spell.
Okay.
So it's like, but this is all happening when that happens, not in regular dreams, but in this type of dream. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm like, something's wrong, and I just don't know how to.
You're remembering.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember, like, yeah, it's
You should write it down when you wake up.
I do
It's like
write
really
it down,
trying
but
to
it's
figure it
starting
out.
to, it's not taking me, like I say to myself now at this point, now I'm like, okay, I'm out of my body, I see everything, I'm about to go through the wall,
Mhm.
but where am I going? It just takes me wherever it wants to, it doesn't, I don't have control of where I'm supposed to go.
Yeah.
It's practice, yeah.
Yeah.
He's trying to tell you.
That's so.
Maybe messing
What-
with dark magic.
That's
That's why when I first started
No,
coming,
no,
I was messing with dark magic.
Oh.
And my dreams were nuts for a while.
Yeah. Well, it's a good question, right? Where am I going? Okay. Now, there's a psychological aspect to that, which implies that that's what you're asking yourself during your wakeful state during life. Where am I going?
Oh yeah, and then when
You
you're
know.
dreaming, you ask yourself the same thing
Yeah.
over and over, that's
It's-
when you realize that you can float. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
That was gonna be my next tip, by the way. When you realize that when you're asking yourself, where am I? Am I dreaming or am I physically here? Pull your finger, pinch yourself, try to fly, try to jump, and you'll see that you'll be able to fly. You'll be able to all of those things. Okay. Don't ask the person next to you to pull your
I
finger.
just had a dream that I could just fly, kind of jump.
I love
Oh,
it.
the jumping,
Yeah.
yeah.
But then after I realized that that was in the real world, and in this world, I'm like, I wish I would have had more familiarity.
Familiarity.
Yeah, with it, so that I can remember, like more vividly in this realm. You know what I mean? So I want,
Right.
yeah, I think it's more practice in the aesthetic.
It's very
Right.
vivid.
Yeah.
It's more vivid than I'm like, did I just experience that? It takes you into a
Right.
bliss like for 3
Then you
days.
wake up tired because you don't even sleep good.
So.
I don't even want to.
So
sleep.
my advice to you, because this happens to me as well, I find myself in dreams where I realize that I'm dreaming, and then one of the things that I like to do is I like to kneel and pray, and I concentrate in my heart, and I concentrate in my being. I say, my Father, my being, what am I doing here? What do you want from me? Can you take me wherever it is that I need to go to learn what I need to learn?
Surrender. Surrender to it.
It's part of it,
It's
yes.
fine, but I do that. I say to
Okay.
myself, I need to go wherever it is that the universe wants to take me, and it
Okay.
takes me to this weird stuff that I'm like, oh my
All
God.
right, so maybe, it's taking you wherever you have to be, okay? And it's taking you to places that you have to perhaps remember about yourself, things that you have to see that will help you understand your life in a fuller way, okay? And it can be pretty chaotic because sometimes dream can seem like they don't really connect with
Well, it's not
with
something
themselves.
about just anybody.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a psychologist, so
Okay.
imagine.
I would look for signs.
So-
If you see like a dog or just different things, and look at what means behind of what they mean.
Mhm.
So I can tell you.
Right, symbolisms and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, all right, well, we're actually getting way ahead of time. because I love that we're sharing. That's great. Because that's where we're going. Eventually, we're going to spend another course on just dreams alone and astral projections and how, in essence, it's all part of it, right? As we begin to expand our consciousness, we begin to have more aware of our internal worlds, okay, of our dream worlds. Which one of the things that dreams are great for is that they give us symbolic representations of how we're living our lives and of our character, right? And so then it is up to us through science to learn to decipher the codes, to decipher the symbols that our subconscious is throwing to the conscious mind that will help us, again, have a clearer perspective of who we are, what our purpose is, and where we're going, okay? So for now, I'm going to say hang in there, okay?
I have a whole bunch of stuff that I need to talk to you about. because
Okay.
I'm actually taking a class in Princeton over this because they've collected a few people that they're doing a study on.
Mhm.
They want to do on these robots, these AI robots. They
Mhm.
want to be able to put this consciousness into the
Right.
robots. I don't know how they're going to do it, but
Right.
they're really planning on it.
Okay.
So they're collecting, like, they're getting a group of people who had studied these things.
Mhm.
So I'm one of them, thank God.
Okay.
But I was more like, what's it called? Somebody paid for it, like sponsored me
Okay.
to take that, to be in that group.
Cool.
But it has to do with that. They all
All
want
right.
to find out and try to pinpoint what's going on, and I just can't come up with an answer.
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk after class for a little bit. All right. So yes, one question.
Can I bring you back to the conscious shocks?
Okay, the conscious shocks.
So I know that you said, you kind of talked about unconscious shocks.
Mhm.
You're walking down the street, your mind is somewhere else, and in the car, and you're just shocked back into your body.
Right.
What would be an example of a conscious shock? Would it be meditation?
Yeah. Well, a conscious shock is when you are consciously bringing yourself back. When you're consciously making an effort to be more aware, to be more conscious. Okay. So an example is now you know that you should practice mindfulness. Now you know that you should be aware of yourself. And so,
you kind of catch yourself drifting off and
Right.
bring yourself back.
right. And so throughout the day, when you see yourself flying away, then you're like, wait a second, let me just take a moment to remember myself, right? And this is what we do in meditation, right? You begin to see that your mind takes you here, takes you over there. And in meditation, it's very easy to see your mind wander away, right? In practical life, it's a little harder in the beginning because we're used to using the mind to sort of figure things out and plan things and all that, right? We spend more time planning than really like doing, right? And so in meditation, it's easier to experience the conscious shock. Because in meditation, I will be here and I will say, okay, let's bring attention to the breath. Hold your breath. Inhale, exhale, and then all of a sudden the thought goes away. Or your mind takes you away somewhere else. And then I'll say, okay, come back. Remember the counting. And then in that moment, you'll make a conscious effort to come back to the breath, right? So you can say that it's sort of a conscious, unconscious shock because I'm telling you to come back, but you're the one that has to come back. See? And I mean, sometimes when I'm guiding a meditation, people fall asleep. They don't come back. Okay? Even when I'm calling them, they don't come back. Okay? So
you do guided meditation.
yes. Yeah. Every class. After the end of the lecture, I guide a meditation.
So I'm just basically wondering if there's more than one, there's an umbrella of conscious shocks.
An umbrella of conscious shocks.
So if there's like a lot of things that fall under that besides meditation, like there's exactly like if there's tools that people use, like there's shamans that use different various types of plants. And
Yeah.
is that a way of
Yeah.
is that a conscious shock?
Right, yeah. I think I mentioned this last week, right? The last class. Yeah, that's those are ways in which we use shamans who use certain medicines, certain plants to make you go into that state of self-awareness and even of cosmic awareness, of cosmic consciousness.
Can we do that?
Huh?
Can we do
Oh
that
my God.
all together?
Can we do that all together? I'm not a substance facilitator. I don't consider myself a shaman.
Isn't it supposed to happen when you do the guided meditations? That's the whole purpose of it. That when
Yes.
you do the guided meditations, the people who fall asleep is that you're still in bad shape. So the people who don't fall asleep, I mean, it shifts you into thinking other things. It will teach you wherever you're supposed to be going.
Yeah.
That's the purpose.
I maybe I'll take back what I said for a minute because I will say that I'm actually a substance facilitator because we know, for instance, that when you take certain medicines, certain plants or drugs, okay, they produce certain chemicals in your brain and your body in general that sort of open up certain parts of your brain that allow your consciousness to sort of expand, right? It's sort of like cheating, yeah. And so it's a little bit of cheating, all right? But at the same time, at the same time though, when you really think about it, let's say DMT, right? DMT is a substance that's found in ayahuasca, it's found in the buffalo various toad, for instance, and several other things. But the thing is, we produce DMT. Our own body produces DMT. Our pineal gland produces DMT.
So wait, you have that?
No.
Yeah, well, I have DMT in my pineal gland. No, I don't. I don't facilitate it. So the point is that you have all of those substances within yourself already. And so when we ingest another plant, what it happens is that it triggers more production of that within our body. But that is an external substance that we're using to create more of this substance in our body. We can naturally produce that, right, when we meditate. When we, through breathing techniques and meditation techniques, we can activate our pineal gland and begin to secrete more DMT, which bring you or give you visions, right, and transport you to allows you to experience that oneness, right, integrate yourself with the oneness. So I'll say that in one way or another, I am a substance facilitator because I guide you in a way so that you're able to tap into that and release that from within yourself, right? But in all seriousness, you're the one that's doing the work. You're the one that is really turning on all of those switches, right? And meditation is the most accessible and easier way to practice this. And then also just, this is why mindfulness, right? Mindfulness is the way, because when you sit down to meditate, you are being mindful. So mindfulness is sort of the center of gravity, right, of the entire process, okay? And then, as we said, there are degrees and degrees and degrees of mindfulness, or degrees and degrees of self-awareness, okay? And the more that we train our mind to focus, to concentrate on whatever it is that we need to become aware of, the deeper that you go inside, okay? And so that's why the guided meditations after each of the lectures, because through meditation, we begin to train the mind to little by little stay here. Come here. Yeah, microdosing, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
You record them? Do you have them like in
Yeah, I record the lecture and I record the meditations, and I can send them to you after the class. Okay, so
Get into it.
good. Yeah, let's get into it. Let's go. Let's microdose.
Yeah.
Huh?
Actually, have a good guy.
Yeah, let's do a meditation.
Yeah.
Really
You
gonna
said
go
that
bathroom
from-
Yeah, me
first.
too.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Bathroom break,
Go
then
use it.
meditation.
Yeah. All right. Bathroom break.
Alright, cool. And we got he's actually a mycologist that actually grows
Okay.
unbelievable stuff.
How are all of you guys doing online?
Good.
We're here.
I hope that
Fine.
I think I've lost a few of you, but I hope that you're enjoying the topic and the conversations that we're having here. Feel
Yes,
free to
I
jump in.
am. Sure.
Okay, cool. Any questions about the topic? Was it anything that you feel that you need me to expand on, or?
No, it was clear and concise to me. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Ann. All right, and so we will continue to talk about mindfulness for at least the next 2 or 3 weeks, okay? And I'm going to go back to the concepts that we studied today, and we will continue to explore more techniques on how to help ourselves be more present, be more aware, and microdose. I love that. All right?
What they say to practice, this is the way I know it, that when you practice mindfulness is because when you're eating, don't think about what I'm going to do next, what I'm going to wear,
Yep.
like things like that. If you're eating,
Yeah.
You're going to bed, think you're going to bed.
Yeah. Exactly.
So interesting to talk about power now. I was just talking about, I had a meeting just before I came here, with my agent, and I was saying about how when I was younger, I was in a position where I should have been grateful, and now I have the chance to do it again, and I can appreciate it more because I was always, when I was younger, I was always, oh, I'm going to do this, but I wasn't appreciative of what I had at the moment. And so now, as I'm older and wiser, I'm appreciating the now.
Right.
You know, the opportunity now. This, you know, I'd say this memorial's never promised. Yesterday's gone, so
Right. Yeah.
there's nothing you can do. And now is the most important time.
And the now is where life is pushing you towards, and this is something that we will explore. But I came to realize something fascinating, you know, and it's the fact that, you know, we're always sort of avoiding the now, running away from the now, planning and doing things and this and that, and eventually life will bring you to the now, because when you die, when we lose our physical body, and you have no more physical body to distract yourself with and physical activities or thoughts, you're in the now, you know? And so that's why I say that this is a preparation for that, you know? This is why the Egyptians were so focused on, they gave more importance to the afterlife than this life, you know? The Egyptians, the Buddhists, the Christians, right? Because you're only here for a speck, you know, yeah, a speck of time in the grand scheme of things. And you're going to be there forever, right? So I think it's worth taking advantage of this moment to prepare ourselves to be in that place consciously, right?
It's fascinating that there's so much Egyptian energy in the room and topics and whatever. When you talk about dreams, I went to Egypt in 2011. I shared before you came, and I didn't remember dreams before that time.
Oh, interesting.
And now I can remember a time before that experience and a time after that experience. And my dreams are I don't know. They're I don't even know how to explain what it is that I feel now. I know that, and I won't even say that it's Egypt or that place. It just triggered something within me that now I'm able to connect to.
Right.
You know, and you talk about the now. You know, brought me here. So I appreciate you bringing that up and putting that into space.
Cool. Yeah, I remember. You go first. I've talked enough.
I was just gonna say I believe and know that there's certain places that we're called to. We're meant to go to activate something within us. I'm being called to Peru.
I'm going to Peru.
I'm going in November.
Yeah.
Oh,
Nice.
oh my God. We can go. All right. I'm going in November, and I've been called there for years now.
No.
And I'm actually going by myself.
Yeah, I'm going with a friend. It's her birthday. But,
Oh, it's my birthday. That's what I'm going for.
It is.
Birthday.
You know
I've
what's-
been called there for years.
You know what's very interesting? That Ibsen, we got in touch like, what, 2 months ago maybe? On like Instagram, she saw my post and she just started getting interested in coming to the classes. And she was trying to make it to a few classes, she couldn't make it. And then when she saw my pictures in Costa Rica, we just got married 2 weeks ago in Costa Rica. Turns out she was in Costa Rica too.
Right,
It's
at
like
the same time.
we're both in Costa Rica at the same time. We never met each other physically, but it's sort of like, oh, okay.
Synchronicity.
Yeah, and then I'm like, all right, I have this next course. You definitely have to come. We have to meet. You know.
Yeah. So, and it's funny about
Yeah.
that, but it's really funny about us being in Costa Rica at the same time. I've been seeking and searching for a long time for any sort of guidance as to where I'm supposed to be, to
Mhm.
meet more people who are like-minded and things like that. But I'm very, I guess, protective of myself, so I haven't
Sure.
really, and that's why it took me a long time
Yeah,
to
yeah.
actually come and do
I
it.
understand it.
And then the fact that also you mentioned that your wife is a massage therapist.
Oh,
I'm a
that's
massage
right.
therapist.
Yeah, yeah.
That really, like, and then the Costa Rica thing, I was like, oh my, I had no choice but to come.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
was it was actually, I was pulled here. So
Right.
I'm grateful to
Yeah.
be here.
It's
Cool.
real synchronicities. On my way on the train here on 42nd Street, I ran into Elton Fitzgerald. Like, I haven't seen in years. Remember I was telling you the story about him? Yeah. When we first met what, 3 weeks ago at a concert, and this is the guy I was telling you what we were talking about. It just clicked. The notes of this conversation just drew us together.
Oh, okay.
So I invited him here, and then and then I saw him today, and I was gonna make sure I told you about that. It's just thing that it's just a synchronicity that.
Isn't that awesome?
Wow. Yeah, it's just wow.
It's pretty wild. Yeah, when you get into a spiritual path, you begin to see so many
Just notice it.
coincidences.
Yeah.
Yeah. You start to notice connections.
I put myself to this, and I wanted to be able to, put all the dots together and see all those things that I've opened myself to. So, at least in this realm.
Cool. All right. So one small technique that I mentioned last week, I believe, was a great way to bring awareness to self and to help you become present is to bring your hand to your heart. Okay? And I like to do it in the Egyptian way, where you bring your left hand on your heart and then the right on top of the left. Okay? If you go to Egypt, you'll see many statues. The right is actually on top of that. The right is on top of the left. Okay? When you do that, okay, right away you feel something. You feel presence in your heart. That is the source of life, right? Or this is where life is felt with more intensity. And as soon as you do that and you begin to breathe, you begin to feel this new state of presence, this new state of awareness. You begin to get more connected with me. And this is why when we say, who are you? You say me, or this is me. You point to your heart, right? And so when you bring your hands to your heart, awareness comes to who you are, okay? And so this is what we can do in meditation as well, or when you're walking, right? When I'm walking, and I'm a dog walker, so I walk a lot. When I'm walking, I feel my heart. I try to feel life through the heart. I feel my heart, and I feel every step that I'm taking through the heart, right? I try not to just feel the steps with my feet. I try to feel through the heart. Does that make sense? Like right now, feel the floor through your heart, through your feet, but through your heart, right? And that allows you to begin to enter into a state of being, which has more to do with feeling than sensing, okay? And that's sort of one of the qualities of being. That's one of the qualities of self-remembering, of being mindful, is that it's more about feeling than doing or than physically sensing things and seeing things, okay? All right, so with having said that, let's go into a short practice of meditation, okay?
Try this chair.
Oh, yes, sure. Here, bring it over here on the side. All right. Let's just make sure that our phones are in silent. No. It's like you're kneeling and sitting at the same time. So your knees are here and your butt is here. There you go.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it helps you. It helps you with like correct posture and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay.